established maybe several things in life.
Right.
So you're constantly asking a question: How can I allow this to happen to me? How can I be so blind by that? And the thing about it is that our Creator has caused us to have a heart of love,
Sure.
and want to be loved. That's just natural, whether it be with a man or a lady.
Right.
That's just the nature of who people are.
Sure.
To have that. So we're constantly looking to feel that. And when we see that someone has some of the traits, or even partially all of the traits that we like, we're really, instead of really looking through, we're jumping on that and moving forward with it.
Absolutely.
And we kind of miss or ignore the red flags that are there.
Right.
You know, the way that we forgive ourselves is, number one, to know that you're human. You're not Superwoman. You're not. You have feelings. So it's number one that you are human, and you are liable to make mistakes.
Sure.
And to give yourself permission to either fall in love with somebody, or even the fact that you have.
Absolutely.
That's important to know. Honestly, if you don't forgive yourself, there's no way that you're able to move on with any other type of relationship with anyone, whether it be a business partner or co-worker or whatever. You're going to have a difficult time with that. Holding on to unforgiveness causes bitterness. So you are pretty much become an angry person.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's number one, is really grabbing hold of who you are and forgiving yourself, letting yourself off the hook for making a mistake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this to you, and I'm going to say this definitely to our audience. It's just been my experience that women bear the brunt of so many things, whether the relationship falls apart, whether the kids fall apart, whatever the case might be. Ladies, it's pretty easy for us men to take a look at you and to say, you're not enough of something. This is your fault. If you had been better, then maybe I wouldn't have strayed. Or if you had been better, maybe this relationship would have worked. Or how about this? You might actually hear from your mother, or you might actually hear from your father in the case of divorce, or in the case of something falling apart. You need to work harder. You need to be a better spouse. Ladies, the reality is this. It takes two to tango. Just as we're asking these things of you all, in terms of what you bring to the table, we have to ask the exact same thing of men in terms of what they bring to the table. Because you can't have a relationship without two people, right? I think in what I see in terms of forgiveness, for men, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to do something. I'm going to tell you this right now for you men out there. I'm going to ask you to be a bit vulnerable. And what does that vulnerability look like? It looks something like this. Admit where you're wrong. Admit that you want to be better. Admit that you feel like you have it within your heart to be something, to be an even better spouse, to be an even better friend. Because life is not just about the reaction. Life is about the internal reaction, right? It's about the decisions that you make internally that are going to allow you to make those decisions for the people that you walk with, that you live with, and that you love. It just seems like when we talk about forgiveness, we're a culture that likes to hold on to things, right? You ever seen that show Hoarders?
Yes.
Where people hoarding all this crap and all this shit, right? Yeah. Excuse me, I said shit. But all this stuff out there, right? I think that we're emotional hoarders also.
Oh, no doubt.
Right? And it gets to the point where we're keeping so much of that stuff inside that we're not able to see this life for what it really is. We're seeing this life for what people have allowed us, right? Allowed us or kind of crystallize our perspective on it. And we're seeing it through this pain lens, and we need to step beyond that. How would you help somebody step beyond that?
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier ago. Do you want to move forward? Because that's a key question. Not everybody wants to move forward.
Right.
And one of the reasons is to feel like, to hold on to something, they feel like they have something over someone's head.
Sure.
Or they're not losing something by keeping unforgiveness.
Right.
When in actuality, they're losing everything.
Right.
They're losing themselves. And so the number one question that I would ask is do you want to move forward from this?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a record that you want to keep playing over and over and over in your head?
Right.
Or do you want to move past this and have better relationships with people? That's step number one. Number two is to start finding, I would think, materials or readings that really help nurture that hurting spot
Sure.
that you have. That's the only way that you want to move forward. And you have to focus on it. You have to purpose your heart to focus on those things that are good,
Right.
those positive things that are moving forward with you. So that's kind of the first steps to me, I think, as far as moving past some type of unforgiveness. It's a hard thing, but it's definitely something that has to.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. I want to take a couple minutes to talk about some personal things as well. We've been talking about forgiveness just within the context of romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind, there are things that might have happened to people that sort of color the way they see life. Whether that might be some type of abuse that they experienced at an early age. And I'm amazed by the number of women that I've come across who have encountered some type of physical abuse or sexual abuse.
Sure.
Whether it be by someone that they know in the case of a relative or somebody that they don't know. And they've had to sort of move on with their lives, right? But so many of those past issues have just never really been addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Say for myself was back in 1992, and it's just a classic case of how one incident can sort of trap you in place. In 1992, or 1991 rather, senior in high school, and I think I'm dating myself. You know what I'm saying? Because I am 37, right? My family, we're the victims of cross burnings by the Ku Klux Klan. And my father at the time had just taken a position as a principal in Dubuque, Iowa, at Irving Elementary School. My mother and I stayed in St. Louis because it was my senior year in high school, and went to Luther North, repping Luther North. I got to put a plug out there, right? Not that I want to go back, right? But it was my senior year, so we just figured that my parents would do a commuter marriage, and I would see my father every single weekend. That he would come back for my football games, basketball games, or baseball games. And initially, everything seemed great. My father would come in every single weekend. He'd tell me different stories about Dubuque, Iowa, how things were going, the kids that he had. He was a principal at an elementary school. But I started to notice that as the weeks went by, he just seemed different. And you know when you're close to somebody,
Yeah.
you can kind of tell when they're going through something, even if they're not necessarily talking about it. But I was 17 years old at the time. So when I'd ask my father, what's going on? How are you feeling? He'd just quickly look at me and say, Jason, I'm fine. Tell me about you. I was 17 years old, so I'm going to talk about me. That was the thing. I'll never forget one particular, I think it was September 1991, September, October. We're about to play Jennings in Jennings High School in a football game. And the agreement that my father and I had was that he would come home every single Friday, and I let him sleep Friday night. Saturday I go play football, he'd watch me, and then Saturday night we would hang out, and then Sunday he'd drive back to Dubuque, Iowa. Well, this one particular Saturday, he didn't come home. I remember Friday night, I'm asking my mom, have you talked to Dad? Have you heard anything about Dad? And my mom, who's an incredibly strong woman, would just say, no, everything's fine. I'm sure he's fine. You know your dad. He probably pulled over on the side of the road, got some sleep. But we'll see him. Saturday comes around, I still haven't heard from my father. And I get this call at around 10:15 in the morning, and keep in mind I'm scheduled to be on the field at 11. And it was from my father letting me know that he wasn't coming home. See, what my father hadn't told me was that when he was officially announced as the principal at Irving Elementary School, our family was the first family to come to Dubuque under this program called the Constructive Integration Program, where they were going to bring in over 300 African-American families over the course of 10 years. Nobody ever told us this. So as soon as it was officially announced that he was the principal, the Ku Klux Klan came in and they formed an organization called the National Association for the Appreciation of White People. Now, I have no problem with this because we have an NAACP. But I do have a problem when your sole purpose for creating this program or this group was to harass my father. Well, my father, fast forward to that Saturday, and my father's telling me he's not going to come home because he's been sequestered by the U.S. Department of Justice. You see, the Klan had burned directly across the street from his office building. They had harassed him at his apartment, they had broken in on numerous different occasions, and had broken into his car. And it started to make sense why we were getting these letters, even here in St. Louis, saying things like, "Nigger, we're going to kill you," or "We know where you live." It didn't make any sense to me because I didn't know the things my father was going through. The bottom line is this, folks. Everybody has their 15 minutes of fame, and in that one particular moment, our 15 minutes of fame started because my father was on CNN. And I remember watching my father walking down the hall with two white children, and there's this big caption that says, "Dr. Jerome Greer has been the victim of cross burnings." I remember feeling in that moment like everything I thought I knew about how this world works was suddenly shattered. We ended up doing Oprah, we ended up doing Donahue, we ended up doing a variety of talk shows just talking about the different things that my family was going through. And I'll never forget in the moment, all I'm thinking about was I'm 17 years old and there's over 3 million women across this nation who are going to be seeing me on television. And it still didn't make any sense to me. And it wasn't until that final moment where we're on a talk show and a commentator actually asked me, "What's it like to be a black pioneer?" And I paused and I said the only thing I could possibly say: "It sucks. It's 1991 and you're asking me what it's like to be a black pioneer. It sucks because I'm going through the exact same thing my grandfather went through, the exact same thing my father went through growing up in Tennessee." Well, the media caught on to that, and everybody has their 15 minutes of fame, but ours evaporated very quickly. But what I was left with was the fact that I felt like my innocence was taken away from me. What I was left with was this fear that there was somebody who was going to hurt me the way the Klan had hurt my family. That one moment in time completely changed the way I looked at life. It impacted my romantic relationships, it impacted my friendships, it impacted the way that I saw life. Folks, and it wasn't until I finally got to the point where I could actually forgive the Ku Klux Klan 17 years later that I was able to move on. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're dealing with some type of hurt, if you're dealing with some type of pain, it all starts with being quiet, going into yourself, and forgiving yourself. Even if you're not the one who perpetrated the act against you, forgiving yourself by acknowledging that you're hurting. It's okay. You might get to the point where you're able to forgive the person or the people that hurt you. I get that. But as Carmen said it before, when the chips are down, you are all that you have. Become complete within yourself. Forgive yourself for whatever might have happened so that you can go forward. And that forgiveness starts by being you and loving who you are. Folks, I want to thank you so much for joining, giving you back to you. Carmen, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you. And we'll definitely see us next Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. You're watching iWatchRadio.com. Now you can see what we're talking about. Thank you so much, and take care.